Good evening and welcome to the Placentia City Council Candidate Forum. My name is Jan Wagner. The League of Women Voters and the City of Placentia, the candidates and I welcome you to tonight's forum. The League of Women Voters is a trusted, nonpartisan political organization that has been active for 100 years. While we never endorse a candidate or party, we are directly involved in shaping the important issues to keep our community strong. As a League member, I have the opportunity to contribute in ways that have a great impact on local, state, and even national issues. If you are interested in learning about how you can make a similar impact, I encourage you to visit our League website at lwvnoc.org. Membership is open to men and to women. In accordance with pandemic guidelines, we are conducting this forum without any in-person audience. The good news is you are all watching comfortably from home on your televisions or computers, either as we broadcast live or as you make use of available links on www.placentia.org PCTV. The forum is broadcast live on Spectrum Channel 3, AT&T Channel 99, and the link that I just gave you. Many of you have emailed questions to us in advance. As is often the case, we have received many more questions than we will probably be able to have time to ask the candidates tonight, but we'll do our very best. Questions have been combined to avoid duplication and have been screened to eliminate personal attacks or questions that do not pertain to the duties of City Council. Assisting us this evening are our timekeepers, Linda Lockwood and Patty Chikahisa. Our candidates this evening have drawn lots for the order that they are seated at the dais. They are Ward Smith, Devin Gray, Hilaire Siohara, and Rhonda Shader. First to give his opening statement this evening will be Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Welcome everyone and thank you for joining us here tonight. I currently serve as your appointed mayor and it has been an honor to serve in this capacity. I have lived in Placentia most all my life. I am a product of our great schools, elementary through high school. Following college, it was an honor to serve the city for 34 plus years as a member of the Placentia Police Department, where I retired as chief of police. Because of my many years of experience in the community, I was elected as your councilman. Together, we have accomplished much in these last 4 years. We have strengthened our public safety through the creation of the Placentia Fire and Life Safety Department that both enhanced the service through a new deployment model and created a savings of approximately $2.3 million a year. Put in place fiscal checks and balances and programming to bring about long-term and forward-looking fiscal sustainability. Established an infrastructure repair fund that have begun repaving and repairing the city's streets, sidewalks, and facilities. We constructed the Placentia Veterans Village and Navigation Center to address and shelter and work with those that are homeless in our community. In these past several months, I have worked closely with my colleagues on council and the mayors across the county to keep our communities healthy and safe while keeping our business community working and productive through financial support and resources in the challenging time of COVID. I look forward to continuing to serve the residents and businesses of Placentia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Gray.
Good evening. First, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this event on and thank everyone who has decided to tune in and spend their evening with us tonight. My name is Devin Gray and I'm running for District 1. District 1 encompasses, for the most part, the southwest quadrant of the city. It includes neighborhoods like La Jolla, Old Town, Cinnamon Tree Apartments, and other surrounding neighborhoods. I'm a proud product of Placentia, proud product of our public schools. I attended Tynes Elementary, Kramer Middle School, and Valencia High School. During college, I served as a city commissioner here, working to help organize our annual Concerts in the Park series, and in doing so, raised tens of thousands of dollars for our public school teachers. I then went on to attend and graduate from Stanford Law School last year, and most recently worked in the office of Governor Gavin Newsom, working as a policy advisor on housing and homelessness issues, in addition to the state's COVID-19 response. The values and diversity of Placentia were foundational in shaping my worldview. It also taught me at a very early age that the opportunities one is afforded are often shaped by the neighborhood in which you're raised. This is a consequence of disparities in investment in our side of town. And I don't think there's an issue that encapsulates this disparity more prominently than the quality of our roads. I think all of us who drive down Orangethorpe or La Jolla Street or Walgreen Street regularly understand that the quality of our infrastructure is simply in a state of disrepair. But this isn't random. It's a consequence of choices to invest in certain neighborhoods and not in others. I'm running because we need representation that takes into account the needs of all of our residents and in all of our neighborhoods and reflects the values of our community and what makes us special. I'm the only candidate who has been endorsed by our Congressman Gil Cisneros. I look forward to working with him on a myriad of issues, and I look forward to earning your support tonight as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. And with an apology to Mr. Shiora for mispronouncing his name in the introduction, it is your time now for an opening statement.
Thank you. My name is Hilaire Shiora. And first and foremost, I want to open up with something that really matters to all of us. I want to open up with a prayer, Luke 10:27. Love the Lord, your God, with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. May a safe and speedy recovery happen soon to our duly elected President Trump. Now, to continue on the local level, I'm not just your independent, self-funded pro-life candidate, I'm also a small business owner. I'm the newest resident here, and I also have the newest ideas. I have a website called PlacentiaLibrary.com because I'm also a candidate for Placentia Library as a trustee. Education choice is a major factor for me. I've talked to many parents, they want our schools to reopen safely, and I agree. And at the same time, I know the coronavirus is real, as we all found out. That's why, as you could see, I'm wearing a mask. I take it very seriously, and your safety is important. And that's why I am going to become your next city council member, District 5, and I will make it very surely that we'll put a citywide vote up to let our privatized fire department return to the Orange County Fire Authority or keep it privatized. This is something so essential and important, fire safety. And I'll let the voters, the taxpayers of Placentia decide, not just several people on city council, however well-meaning they may be. So it's now more important now than ever to let the city residents vote. Should we have the privatized fire department return or go back to OCFA? More information, PlacentiaLibrary.com. Thank you. I expect your vote.
Next is Ms. Shader.
I ran for the first time in 2016 following an embezzlement by a city finance employee. Through hard work, our city has recovered almost all of that money. Financial stability and sustainability have been my goal in every decision I have made for the last 4 years, including insisting on a lean, balanced budget every year with accountability and transparency, and creating and implementing a financial policy setting priority for new incoming money before it is received. Once these policies were in place, I aggressively engaged in attracting businesses, housing development, and various contract reviews to create income and get the best value for Placentia. Even with all this effort, the financial gap remained large to meet the aging infrastructure and ballooning pension debt. Because of that, I voted for an enhanced infrastructure financing district to fund improvements in Old Town to sewers, streets, and sidewalks, and I voted to put a 1% sales tax on the ballot, which the people of Placentia agreed to by a 63% vote. All of this income development has stabilized the city financially well into the future. As mayor in 2019, I supported a regional solution to the homeless crisis to build 2 shelters in the area, including one in Placentia. I pushed for the removal of the encampment on Crowther in conjunction with the opening of our navigation center at the beginning of the pandemic. I knew it was important to get the homeless residents safe and in shelter. Acting in essential worker fashion during the pandemic, I was a champion for our businesses and voted accordingly for grants and opening up dining experiences for our restaurants. I am very proud of these accomplishments. I have been a courageous leader that puts Placentia first, and I look forward to continuing to add value when I'm reelected. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to the questions section of our evening. Each candidate has 1 minute to answer these questions, and the questions will move on to all the candidates. First to receive questions this evening would be Mr. Gray. And Mr. Gray, I have several questions that are directed to you specifically that have to do with OCFA firefighters and the Placentia Fire and Life Safety Department. And I'm going to try and combine them because there's three. Please speak to your endorsement from the firefighters union, your contributions to your campaign from that union, your view of the fire and life safety as opposed to the OCFA.
Great, thank you for the question. I'm eager to talk on this topic. When last year we decided as a city to leave OCFA, I was personally opposed to it long before I considered seeking this office. In my position working for the governor, I have seen the tremendous work of our firefighters up and down the state, taking on challenges that are tremendous in scope for our state. Firefighters who are tackling the second, third, and fourth largest wildfires in the history of our state all at once. When I mentioned that I was from Placentia, overwhelmingly people, firefighters across the state were recognizing that what we did was a mistake. And ultimately, we have diminished the capacity of our fire department to be able to respond to emergencies here. But even more easily explainable, I think, is the fact that we have made ourselves less competitive for retaining our firefighters. And it's a free market principle, ultimately. If neighboring jurisdictions are paying better pensions and more sound benefit packages to firefighters, we're gonna have a hard time retaining our best and brightest talent here. And ultimately, this time more than ever, we're recognizing that we need to compensate our firefighters and first responders adequately in these very unique times and challenges.
Thank you. Mr. Shiora?
Thank you. First and foremost, the city council members that voted to privatize the fire department did so with the very best intentions, with a good heart. But with that said, at the same time, I fear that we're going to have so many new recruits going into the private fire department that they're going to go somewhere else for better benefits in other police departments. So this is a real concern. We're going to have a large turnover. That while our two fire stations, Placentia, there would be staffed 1 year, 2 years out, the best able, most capable firefighters will be relocated or go to some other fire department for better benefits. So I would give it up to the voters to decide to return to the OCFA or remain privatized. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shader?
Thank you. Yes, the contract review that we had with the OCFA 2 years ago had a 10-year clause in it. So if we did not pull the trigger and terminate them, my city would have been in a contract for 10 years, which went against my philosophy that any long-term contract needs to be reviewed on a regular basis. I was disappointed that OCFA was not willing to work with the city at that time to negotiate our contract, but it was refreshing to know that we had other options, many viable options. The one that we settled on was bringing our own department back and having private paramedics and a public fire department, which has been highly effective in its first 90 days and has cut the response times in half from our previous fire department and is meeting the people of Placentia's needs and saving $28 million over the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Yes, thank you very much. The contract services provided by OCFA were extraordinary. Their level of service, as it indicated to the service to those on the street, was well put forth. However, myself, being a former chief of police of this agency, watched my budget drop by 9%, while the city's budget only rose by a couple percent, and I watched OCFA's contract costs rise by 47% in the last 10-year duration. We are not performing with a new model that's unknown to folks. It's a model that is recognized by several counties, all but two, Orange County and Los Angeles County, vastly exercise the model that we're using now, as opposed to the rig-driven paramedics. There are large metropolitan areas that use that. But we're providing a model of efficiency and effectiveness with good service-minded individuals, not all new firefighters, many with many years, if not decades, of experience. The privatization of paramedics is going to work very well for us.
Thank you. The next question goes first to Mr. Shiora. What Placentia community positions or projects have you been involved in within the last 5 years that will prepare you to be a council member?
Well, preparing to be a city council member, then my vast years of experience in other school districts outside of Placentia is that I do believe in school choice. I'm new to this area. I carry no political baggage, no favoritism. I will run City Hall for the people, by the people, from the people. So when you vote for me, you're getting a new start, a new beginning, a fresh start. So I do have unique ideas, unique proposals. I'm independent, I'm self-funded. So I am here to get the job done, to work at the state, local, federal level with Democrats and Republicans alike, to get the federal funding to have a OCFA fire authority here. Thank you.
Ms. Shader?
The same question for me?
Yes. Do you want me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
It says, what Placentia community positions or projects have you been involved in within the last 5 years that prepare you to be a council member?
So obviously the last 4 years I've been a council member, so I've been able to engage and learn about organizations in our community that are doing great work. One of which is Lot 318. I serve on their board and engage in serving the children in the La Jolla area with their homework club and keeping kids out of gangs. And then also I've done a lot of training at UCI on policy making, and I have served on committees with the League of Cities and the Association of Orange County Cities, keeping track of legislation, housing ideas and creativity that give me ideas and a lot of plans for the future of the city to make it even more sustainable and to bring a lot of value to the citizens of Placentia.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Yes, thank you very much. I too, like candidate Shader, have been on city council for the past 4 years. I also, as she does, sit on the board of directors for Lot 318 in the Cypress Street area of La Jolla and work with Letty Galley and that program from its onset some 15 years ago. I serve on several outside boards of directors, mostly in the law enforcement professional field, and on church commissions and committees. I am the city's selected representative to SCAG, and I am also the member that represents the SCAG Transportation Committee.
Can you explain what SCAG is, please, sir?
I'm sorry, SCAG is the Southern California Association of Governments.
Thank you. Mr. Gray?
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, I previously served on a city commission, and in doing so, raised tens of thousands of dollars for our public school teachers through planning the annual Concerts in the Park series. More recently, and in my professional career, I have worked at the highest level of state government, helping to craft policy that affects, of course, our state of 40 million people on the issues that are the most salient today. So housing, homelessness, and COVID-19 response, among other things as well. So I believe that more than prepares me for this position. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question goes first to Ms. Shader. What do you see as Placentia's greatest challenge, and how would you address it as member of the City Council?
The one thing that still needs to be addressed is the pension, the unfunded pension debt at the city. And the current council is working towards some solutions for that. And not only to address the prior unfunded debt, but also to prepare for the future, because that unfunded pension debt is strangling not just Placentia, but a lot of cities. Other than that, the delay in infrastructure and streets and roads and sidewalks, that work has been done and we've found ways to fund it. It's just a matter of time. Which is very important, obviously, to the people, that and keeping our public safety top-notch.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Thank you very much. Much of the work that's been done by Placentia in the last couple of years has led to us shifting and moving those issues that are top priorities to us. I don't want to reiterate everything that candidate Shader has spoken to, as those were our most critical and are our most critical needs at this point time, and that's dealing with the pension liabilities. But behind that is, as she has stated, is our crumbling infrastructure. We were without funds for so long, and Mr. Gray has pointed it out. We have some of the worst streets in this county, And we're almost at the very bottom. The only one that beats us is the city of Fullerton, and that's just because they have more road miles than we do. So we need to get back on top of our infrastructure here and provide for facilities that benefit our youth, our seniors. We can make good use of programming here through our community servicing programs, and then get our critical infrastructure of streets, roads, and sidewalks back in place.
Thank you. Mr. Gray.
Thank you. To echo some of the points that have been made, infrastructure is, of course, I think our biggest challenge. And yes, we are bringing in the resources and the revenues to address this through Measure U, which is a good thing. But the question that we have to ask is, when and where are we investing these dollars? To me, it makes sense logically that the neighborhoods that have the greatest need should be at the front of the line to be able to receive those resources. But instead, the main streets that are in most repair in District 1 aren't going to be receiving road repaving until fiscal year 22-23. Frankly, that's too long relative to other neighborhoods in the city. And this isn't just an aesthetic problem. It's not just an inconvenience. This takes money out of people's pockets. I've talked to multiple people in our district who have had to repair their cars, replace their tires 3 or 4 times in the last 12 months. Effectively, that is a tax that's being passed on by the city to its residents by a failure to invest. And I don't think that's out of malicious intent, but it simply does illustrate the point that our neighborhoods should be the ones that are first to be in line to receive the funds to be repaving our roads, because the situation is dire and it's in need of repair now.
Thank you. Mr. Shiora.
Thank you. At every government level, city government, county, state, and federal, we need new elected officials. This is why we need that new elected officials to bring accountability and transparency. For example, the city of Placentia, last time I heard, they wanted to spend $100,000 on a web designer per year almost. Why? We're a town, we're 50,000 people. Do we really need to spend $100,000 on a web designer? No. I have a plan. Let our high school students build a website. Matter of fact, I taught that class in high school. So yes, it could be done. There's wasteful spending. How much money was embezzled? Millions of dollars that we don't know about. Maybe more, maybe less. But it's time to get new people in and find out what the heck is happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question goes first to Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, how would you describe Placentia's financial position and debt obligations?
Well, once, very ugly. Now, much better. Through the passage and distribution and use of the Measure U tax increment increase, we have broken that into specific categories, one of which is specifically directed to our reserves and our pension issues. And they're broken down into increment amounts that are required by us that we can't move, we can't change, or use in other arenas that make it where we are now pushing through the ceiling close to our set amount of reserve capacity at 17%. We're properly managing and overseeing our funds. We're applying them to those areas most needed with specific money, almost 50% or 50% set aside for infrastructure needs and requirements. And then on the pension side, we have specific amounts going directly to that at 10%.
Thank you. Mr. Gray.
Could you repeat the question, please? Thank you.
How would you describe Placentia's financial position and debt obligations?
Great. So I believe the state auditor has ranked our city as having the 3rd most precarious fiscal situation. Obviously, that is the product of a long-standing period of mismanagement, but also the embezzlement scandal, of course, did not make our situation much better. Our pension obligation, of course, is something that needs to be addressed, but I believe it needs to be addressed through the raising of revenues and finding novel solutions to addressing this issue. Obviously, we can't walk away from our debt obligations. These are agreements that have been made longstanding and people have paid into, and ultimately that's money that's going to be owed to them. So we have to be creative in the way that we are raising revenue, and I believe that in working together and bringing people to the table to discuss these things and have hard conversations, we can do just that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shiora.
Yeah, it's quite frightening. With the coronavirus, it's going to become more exacerbated. The pension crisis, the revenue, our tax revenues are down because of the pandemic. It's only going to get worse. That's the tip of the iceberg. Movie theaters closing, restaurants opening, reopening, closing. It's very unpredictable how our economy is going to survive. So now more than ever, we need people with a technology background. I have that technology background. And now more than ever, we have to be more transparent and accountable. One way I would do it is bring federal investment to bring fiber optic cable to our houses to bring home property value up. and pay less taxes. This is one creative way to increase revenue for the city and for the businesses.
You, Ms. Shader.
Yes, thank you so much. When I came to the council in 2016, we literally had no financial plan for how to meet our infrastructure needs, and we had $97 in reserves. At this point, we have income and a plan for meeting all the sidewalk and structure and infrastructure needs over the next 5 years. In addition, we have $3 million now in our reserves, and in the next 6 months, we could have as much as $5 million in reserves. COVID-19's sales tax loss to the city of the Placentia is $2.5 million. We were able to absorb that and meet all of our obligations. And not only that, we were able to meet our union negotiated pay raises to our fine staff and still keep those in the month of July. And that is because of all the hard work that this council did over the last 4 years and the tough decisions we made as your leadership. It's paying off right now during this pandemic.
Thank you. Our next question goes first to Mr. Gray, and Mr. Gray, this one was directed directly to you, and it refers to your candidate statement. In your candidate statement, you say you will work to make Placentia more affordable and address homelessness. Please tell us your plan to do that.
Absolutely. I first want to just clarify a previous statement. I said that the state auditor's office ranked us as the third most precarious in the county. I just want to be clear on that. When it comes to affordability and homelessness, I think the city deserves credit for opening the Navigation Center and the Veterans Homelessness Project as well. But ultimately, temporary shelters are temporary solutions, and what we need to do is invest in permanent supportive housing. Additionally, in raising our permanent supportive housing stock, our affordable housing stock, we will see collectively as a region a decrease in the overall cost of living for all of us. Ultimately, the scarcity of our housing stock is what's driving up the cost. And if we're able to increase the stock of our housing collectively through the region, we're going to see a decrease in costs ultimately. I believe the Orange County Register just last year gave us an F rating in terms of our the permits that we've permitted for low-income housing. We're not on track for reading our regional housing needs assessment goals, which is set to do, we need to have 500 units approved by 2021, so we're not on track for that. Ultimately, when we build more affordable housing, we're going to see a decrease in the cost of living. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shiora.
To address the homelessness and one of the crises throughout the state, what we have to do is work with other bigger cities that could handle the homeless situation. Placentia is not a city. For me, it's a town, and a town simply don't have the capacity that bigger cities have. So Placentia being about 6 square miles simply cannot have the withdrawal to house a homeless shelter. Placentia just cannot handle it. Other bigger cities, perhaps, that we should work with other cities, yes, but that's my stance. Thank you.
Shader.
Thank you so much. I am a huge proponent for housing for all, including our homeless residents and our most wealthiest and everybody in between. I think shelter is one of the core things that people need in society, and I'm happy to be endorsed by the People for Housing in Orange County. I have approved over 1,000 new housing units just in Old Town alone in the TOD development, including affordable units, townhomes, single family, and currently working on a senior housing development. I think it's absolutely true that we need to do better and we need to do more. And I think not only Placentia, but partnering with the areas around us, because housing is a real issue that we need to solve. And I'm very much for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Thank you very much. As it's been stated, the RHNA numbers, or the Regional Housing Needs numbers, seem to be on a sliding scale. They keep adjusting and changing, and we're finding that municipalities are confronted with an ongoing series of basically project reviews to try to hit the numbers. There is a need. All of our communities are impacted by homeless individuals. You need to start with sheltering and getting them off the street and getting them on their way to recovery or setting them up. But then the transitional housing and permanent supportive housing components are huge. And we have started to gear most of our projects and developments to have some component to be prepared to address those in need most and most likely to succumb to a fragile environment and put them back out on the streets. Our developments continue to move forward with components therein for understanding workforce needs and workforce housing projects, and we have several developments that are focused on the table now to make that happen.
Thank you. Well, that question was for Mr. Gray, but it did relate to, we probably have at least a half a dozen questions that were general that relate to housing in some way. So rather than just spending a minute each, let's go to a few more on that subject. Our next question would go first to Mr. Sciorra, and let's ask this. What balance of housing types, affordable, market rate, permanent, supportive, would you envision for this city?
For the city of Placentia, what do I envision is medium income, blue collar households, which it basically is right now. Since Placentia is such a small area, there's only so much it could do. So I would remain to be a blue collar, middle income area, but also make it livable. As a side note to that, we've got to make it more livable. One way to do it, I would make a dog park in Tri-City Park area. That would help the community. I've met a lot of people that said they would really like a dog park. And you might say, how does that help the quality of life? Well, it does for our best friends. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shader.
Yes, housing is one of my favorite subjects. Lately, the thought that I've been having is that we really are missing a lot in the middle. I would be supportive of a transitional housing to permanent supportive that offered services to our residents from our homeless center where there was another step up. I would definitely be supportive of that. And think that's important. I hope it's in our city, but I would be supportive of that wherever it is. We need a lot of those because we have a lot of people in shelters right now. This idea of middle housing is townhomes, duplexes, fourplexes, things like that. We have a lot of apartments underway. I think we need to really catch that middle housing for that sector in Placentia. I think that's the piece that we're missing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Thank you very much. One of the components that we come to struggle with is we're a pretty much built-out city. We've got actually construction going on right now in one of our last pieces of open land that was left undeveloped, and that's underway for somewhat dense housing in townhome or single-family living developments on small plots of property. All of our property that we have left to development has either been looked at as permanent, supportive, or transitional housing, or we're moving some large projects for higher-end apartment living that is set forth in the arena for the workforce, the young couples that will be complemented through the utilization and availability of a Metrolink station that's going in our TOD area for moving folks around.
Thank you. Mr. Gray.
Ultimately, the priority is improving the stock as a whole, but for District 1 specifically, low-income housing for the 30K to 60K family household range for annual income is probably where we need to be prioritizing most of our resources. Additionally, mixed-use housing, taking advantage of trying to build new transportation centers, so by the Metrolink station in Old Town needs to be a priority for us, and in doing so, I think that's probably the best use of our resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question would go first to Ms. Shader. Ms. Shader, I'm going to pull up one of, as I say, the half dozen here that refers to the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, RHNA, since Mr. Smith brought that up. The Regional Housing Needs Allocation for Placentia for 2021-28 is 4,363 new units, including 1,226 very low-income units. What housing policies would you consider to address the RHNA?
So I serve on a committee on the Southern California Association of Governments as well. On behalf of the city, I serve on the Environment and Energy Committee. And because of that, I've been a part of the RHNA process. And so I've known for probably about a year and a half that this was coming, that the RHNA number was going to jump this high for Placentia. To give you a frame of reference, the last 10 years it was like 450 and now we're going to 4,000. So to meet that need, I've already started work. I served on the general plan committee for the city. And while we are a built-out city, I think there's a lot of room for more housing. I've approved going up. I've approved going out. I want to improve all along Orangethorpe, and I think there's room, and I think Placentia can do it. We are going to appeal these numbers probably a little bit, but we're prepared to make room for more people in Placentia for sure in an appropriate and smart way. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Yes, thank you. As been pointed out now in a couple different conversations, that it is a moving target. It's a target that keeps fluctuating, and it's difficult for a city such as ours that is pretty much landlocked and built out in how it is that we accomplish it. So it does, not through an eminent domain process, but it does put on us the abilities and the necessities to create or have creative approaches to our housing. How do we repurpose properties? How do we work in our general plan and zoning on what that looks like and what can be permitted and allowed there? Taking advantage, always pressing that envelope relative to easements and setbacks. How can we gain space to create housing opportunities? And again, keeping that focused onto the demographic of the area, the income bracketing, make more, go higher, spread it out, make it available, get roofs over these people's heads that they can sustain themselves in.
Thank you. Mr. Gray?
Yes, I largely agree. I think building up is going to be the long-term sustainable solution. Obviously, we are a very densely populated city, but in building upward and doing so in ways that are in places that are close to transportation centers, it's ultimately going to allow us to have more people and also take cars off the road by allowing it, making it easier for folks to be able to avail themselves to public transportation. That ends up becoming an equity issue and a strength for us, as well as aiding our efforts to reduce our carbon footprint as well. So ultimately, building up is going to be the long-term solution, but taking advantage of the little open space that we do have and trying to find creative solutions to eventually reach this very lofty number that we have to hit.
Thank you. Mr. Shiora?
Like I said before, Placentia for me is a town, it's not a city. I won't build it up and overcrowd it and make it a dangerous place to live. I will take care of our residents. I will take care of our houses. I'll make this Placentia our town. And that's what's really important. There's a time and place to build up. Placentia, our town, is not Anaheim, it's not Yorba Linda. We're very different, we're very landlocked. We have to be very smart about this. And yes, I agree that we have to have some increase in housing, of course, but much, much more limited than I presume for my fellow candidates. Thank you.
Thank you. Two more. The first one is for Mr. Smith. What is more important in your mind, building new homes and commercial space or rehabbing and better utilizing existing housing and retail space?
Well, we're a very, very old community. We're going to soon be on our 100th anniversary of being incorporated here. We have an old infrastructure. We value and hold closely our historic districts and recognize it's because of them that we established the city that we are today through the citrus industry and the fields and businesses that brought us to where we are. But with that, I look at how is it that we repurpose what we have and take advantage of capitalizing on that. We don't have the luxury of bringing in and building new things. We've spoken to the fact that we do have some development arenas and areas, but we need to reinvent and recapitalize on those that we have here, whether it's housing or commercial properties.
Mr. Gray?
I think the pithy answer is both, but ultimately I tend to lean on the same side of this as Mayor Smith. We do have a very aging infrastructure, and ultimately this creates a public health set of hazards as well as opportunities to improve property values. So I think if we have the ability to improve the existing infrastructure that we have, that should be our top priority, but we also shouldn't thumb our nose at opportunities to develop brand new infrastructure too. But it is important that we maintain the character and the history of our city as well, because it is ultimately foundational to our character as a town, and I think it creates a unique character for the residences that we have.
Thank you. Mr. Shiora?
Yes, I'm gonna agree that, we have to reinvent, and that's what I've been saying all along, that technology will play a key role in that. And as one of the few candidates in the state that has a core background in technology, I will make that happen. Once again, a lot of my policies could be listed at LaCintiaLibrary.com. A lot of my policies have the state, federal, and county level. And more than ever, I have a dedicated website to help other mayors. I have a website called www.mayor.city. Why? Because our cities will be the forefront of improving our economy and our livelihoods throughout the nation, throughout the county, and more so. Now, more than ever, we have to reinvent, but very smartly and very carefully. The coronavirus is real, so I'm asking you to remember, be very careful about building up.
Thank you. Ms. Shader?
Yes, thank you. I do recognize that our kind of former idea of retail is dying. And so that is a constant struggle as you look at a city about what's next for it. I worked with the developer of the corner of Alta Vista and Rose during that discussion. There was trouble getting that corner developed for many, many years, decades actually. And what the issue was is they didn't see a way to move forward with a full retail center there. And of course, we really wanted that. What we negotiated down to after a lot of research was the housing plus some restaurant in the front. Residents need services, they need restaurants for quality of life, but I'm always open to creative ideas and open to what the future of retail centers will be.
Thank you. Shifting gears just a bit. This one goes first to Mr. Gray. Increased housing brings concerns of congestion, traffic. We have concerns about reducing our carbon footprint. Aside from mass transit, how would you propose to improve open spaces within the city's existing structure?
Absolutely, and it's a wonderful concern. It's a very important one. And ultimately, it comes down to the decisions that we make and whether or not we're zoning for green spaces. But I don't think we can necessarily disaggregate the importance of mass transit and finding ways to build in a way that is going to take cars off of the road. We are a densely populated city and a very densely populated county. But ultimately, it's coming down to the decisions that we make that if we're going to approve the development of certain parcels of land for, let's say, a new apartment complex, that in doing so, we are designated certain spaces, designated a certain balance of spaces between the actual residential property, the commercial property, and then also a complementary green space on top of it as well. But ultimately, the way that we develop has to be done in a way that is conscientious of our carbon footprint and ultimately moving us closer to our ultimate goal of reaching carbon neutrality. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shiora?
Thank you. One of the greatest ways to reinvent our city is through what we call in technology dark fiber optics. High-speed internet, as we now know, is much more essential, not just for homeschooling, for businesses, but for society in a whole. I'm the only candidate up here that thoroughly understands something called the fourth industrial revolution, meaning AI and robotics or automation. It's going to affect every level of city government, county, federal, city, businesses and economy. And now is the time to really have a technology debate or have a candidate that thoroughly understands it. This is why, once again, we need new people in city government, county government, federal government, at all times, at all levels. So we're looking forward. I'm looking for your vote. Let's get the job done to make Placentia modern again.
Thank you. Ms. Shader?
Yeah, admittedly, Orange County is a very car-centric county. And so that's always an issue when you bring in more housing and more development. But one of the things that I've learned is that you can partner with the developers of these projects to work on creating more open spaces, to work on walking paths. You can promote complete streets that recognize all modes of transportation, and you can start to get people thinking about different ways of getting around town. And I'm a huge proponent of that. I'm always looking for new and different ideas because I think that that would make our city more vital, and also I'm super supportive of, the electric vehicle charging and many of the different ideas that come before us to make the environment better and to make the quality of life better in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Shifting to a completely different topic. First to Mr. Shiora. How has COVID-19 impacted Placentia's future?
COVID-19 has impacted the economy, the lifestyle, the livelihood, schools, parks, in every way possible. I take it seriously. I believe that we have to take precautions, but we also have to be pro-business, open up our schools. If the schools won't open, it's time to discuss charter schools. I'm here wearing a mask because I understand it's real. That's why I'm wearing a mask. And this is why your public safety is so important to me. I won't say it is, I know it is. And so now is the time to be very careful and work with the federal government and our county government and our state government to protect our citizens. I'm here to get the job done. I'm here to really address coronavirus at every level of our city government, our schools, our libraries, and I'm seeking your support to make our town a lot safer with your vote. Thank you.
Ms. Shader.
Thank you. Fortunately, as I described earlier, the financial impact to Placentia, I hope, as a city, will be minimized. But part of the way we did that is we supported our businesses right away and kept them going. The businesses that provide sales tax and provide a living for people. We were supportive of not evicting people from homes or businesses, and have tried to use our CARES Act money to directly help businesses, especially our restaurants and our personal services. There's no denying that the pandemic is going to have a deep impact, not just financially, but emotionally on a lot of people. And so I think that we have to stay tight with the people, find out what they need, and just walk with them back through this.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Yes, thank you very much. The points made thus far are by Ms. Shader are far-reaching and accurate. It's taken us to a new place, and it's forced us to think outside our box. But what it has done is it built upon a relationship that we knew lay there all the time. We acted quickly to get on top of no evictions, working with rents and lease fees. We stepped in and worked hand in hand with our Chamber of Commerce. I am so proud of the work that they have done and how they have embraced a partnership and a relationship with us to move forward. We quickly moved towards trying to take advantage of federal, state, and local funding for the purposes of securing their business fronts and making sure that they weren't going to go under during this time. And in doing so, in less than a week's turnaround after a council decision was made, we had applications out to our business community along with our Chamber of Commerce, turned it around, got it done in 2 weeks. We had money back to those businesses. These are built on partnerships.
Mr. Gray.
I think a lot of really good points have been made, but I think on a human level, it's important to recognize that COVID has not impacted every community in the same way. It's not impacted every city in Orange County the same way. At the beginning of the pandemic, Placentia had worse numbers than a lot of neighboring cities, more comparable to Fullerton, less comparable, and in worse shape than a place like Yorba Linda. Luckily, that's turned around a lot as Orange County has improved and moved off the county monitoring list. But ultimately, I think we have to recognize that within District 1 specifically, because of the demographic and socioeconomic makeup of our district specifically, that there have been particular harms to our community. But ultimately, yes, we've done a good job in terms of extending the eviction moratorium. I hope we continue to do so, and I hope we continue to provide supports for our small business community, which are truly the lifeblood of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question goes first to Ms. Shader. Ms. Shader, ensuring there are adequate public safety personnel is a concern to residents and businesses alike. How do you ensure that Placentia maintains an adequate level of public safety services?
Well, I suppose that I do that by monitoring and getting reports on the calls that are being answered, what those response times are, that people are being taken care of. I do have to say that I've been on this council 4 years, and I can count on one hand the amount of complaints I've ever gotten about our police or fire's performance. And so we are very blessed in this city to have very solid public safety. And so you keep your tabs on that, you talk to the leadership. I talk to my peers in other counties and other governments. I talk to subject matter experts, consultants, to make sure that we are meeting all the standards in police and in fire, and that when that 911 call comes in, that it is dealt with, and that we are responding to those residents as fast as possible, meeting their greatest need. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Certainly, after spending, like I said, almost 35 years working for the police department, I have a deep sense of understanding and trust of the operations of that particular department. We maintain our staffing levels at a level that is commensurate with the needs of this city and also as we can afford them to be there. I've worked with lower staff numbers than we have now, and we are certainly hitting the benchmark when we're at our total, what they call TO, or the total number of operating officers afforded under our budget. But in doing so, it's a department that is filled with understanding and compassion. It doesn't just live by the letter of the law. It looks at individuals and figures out how is it that they can support one another and how can they be parts of solutions and not just move problems down the road. It's also a department that has prided itself on taking on the concept and the true meaning of the Code of Ethics, Law Enforcement Code of Ethics, but applying the intelligence methods and the equipment and the things that help us become more efficient and effective in the way it is we do our job.
Thank you. Mr. Gray?
Ultimately, our budgets are reflective of our values, and I think that if we are committed, as I believe we have been, to promoting public safety in the city, that our budgets have to reflect that, and we can't walk away from pension liabilities, of course. When it comes to public safety broadly, though, I think that we have to ensure that we're constantly developing a comprehensive approach to public safety. So that means doing our part to support our law enforcement by investing in crisis counselors, mental health professionals, and the like. I know to an extent we've done so with the homelessness issue, which is great, and I think the city deserves credit for that. And when it comes to our fire department as well, I believe it's important for us to demonstrate that we have met the essential professional standards, and in doing so, hopefully achieve a automatic aid agreement with neighboring jurisdictions, including Brea, Anaheim, and OCFA. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shiora?
Yes, thank you. Ultimately, it comes down to tax revenue. So we have the tax revenue collection so we could pay for our city services, public safety. Well, I talked to a lot of businesses. The Chamber of Commerce is never open. It's almost never there. They don't answer the phone. Has some application. I don't know the mystery application some of the candidates are talking about. I've talked to the businesses. They never seen it. Also, going back to public safety, we need to pair our officers together. I believe that's one step forward. Is really, I would like to see our brave men and women in the police force paired together in duos. That would be a great way to also improve their safety and the public safety. And also, I will work hard with Democrat and Republican candidates across the federal level, state level, county level to get the funding we need to make that happen so we can be a role model for other municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question goes first to Mr. Smith, and it's on a similar topic. What are your thoughts and policies regarding community policing? The idea of implementing a program that might add a medic or a crisis worker to the police department, freeing law enforcement officers to focus on criminal activity.
Was one of the comments you made adding a medic?
Yes, it says a program that would add a medic or a crisis worker to the police department to assist with calls where law enforcement is not required.
Well, I think the current model that we use through our fire department is placed upon an assessment that allows us to utilize our current paramedic program in a way that benefits and assists our officers or law enforcement side of the fence in handling matters that don't necessarily require police intervention or usage. But what is something to be considered, again, in always maintaining that outside the box thinking, is how can you employ those crisis counselors in the field? How can they become part of solutions in dealing with individuals that don't end up tying up officers for extended period of time to allow them to move on to other law enforcement activities? That is a similar program that we've had in the past in utilizing a volunteer program and also the use of our chaplains. A lot of times in critical incidents of families in stress and need, we can use resources at a call and then set forth the officers to go back out on the street and deal with the actual calls for service.
Thank you. Mr. Gray.
I'm fully supportive of this. I think much like our school teachers, we ask our law enforcement officers to do far too much and far too much outside the scope of their call of duty. Most police officers have not signed up to be police officers to become mental health professionals or to become crisis counselors. They sign up and take this noble profession to respond to and prevent crime. Ultimately, in our failure to invest in a more comprehensive and circular public safety strategy, we end up hurting ourselves, hurting those who are being responded to, and ultimately taking away and obstructing the performance of the duties that law enforcement officers are called to in the first place. So I think this is a wonderful idea. I think it's something that should be supported by anyone from any side of this issue, because ultimately it's going to result in better service delivery for more people and ultimately make it easier for law enforcement officers to do what it is that they're called to do.
Thank you. Mr. Shiora.
The short-term plan is this. I will use the extra funding to hire more police officers, not less. Police officers are doing a great job. They have a hard job. They need support. They need our support by hiring more police officers, not less. Going back to that, the best way to improve law enforcement on the long-term level is have a statewide police department. That maybe is 20 years out. That's the economics of the situation that we speak on the municipality. Going back on a local level, we could also pay our police officers, but to do that, we're going to have to hire more police officers. Whatever extra funding we have should be dedicated to the brave women and men in blue who run towards danger to protect us. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shader.
Thank you. The good news is with our department is some of this is already being implemented. We actually have mental health counselors that go out from time to time with our officers. We also have police chaplains that assist our officers. And on the medical side, our officers carry Narcan for overdose and are all trained in first aid and have equipment in their trunks to help people. Because here's the reality of the situation. These officers are called out to violent situations, and they are always the first on scene. And so they need to be equipped. So even if you have a counselor or somebody with you or coming behind you, still you have to stabilize that initial scene. And so we need our officers to be able to do it. The other great thing about Placentia is we have special detail like homeless liaison officers. We have a strong community policing culture in our department and special training on all kinds of issues that are pertinent. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question goes first to Mr. Gray. What would you do to ensure that more mental health services are available to the city, to the citizens of Placentia?
Like I said before, our budgets are reflective of our values, and if we are serious about addressing the mental health crisis that exists across this country and including in our community, we have to be able to dedicate resources to it. Of course, as others have mentioned, we already have some resources that are dedicated towards mental health services, but ultimately, it's going to require real investment to solve this problem in a very real way. Of course, the most extreme mental health cases that we have to deal with ultimately result in homelessness, and I think that the investments that we've made on that front are laudable. But ultimately, we can't say that just because we've built a shelter that we can wash our hands of the issue, and I don't think anyone is saying that, but we have to continually be on the front foot in dealing with mental health issues. But like I said, our investment into this issue is ultimately going to be determinative of our results, so we have to put our money where our mouth is.
Thank you. Mr. Shiora.
There's a very limited amount of budget in a small town like this. As your next city council member, I will work with Orange County Health Services to get the services we need. We simply don't have the budget to have our own full-time psychiatric daycare. It's just not gonna, the numbers don't add up. Now, some candidates might be wishy-washy and tell you, hey, we have it, we'll do it. No, it's not practical, it's not feasible, it's not realistic, it's not truthful. I will work with the county level and the state level to get the mental health professionals we need, but I will absolutely not waste taxpayers' dollars on some foregone conclusion that we're going to be capable to have our own psychiatric clinic. It's just not going to happen. We're too small of a township municipality to do so. Thank you.
Ms. Shader.
Yes, thank you. Obviously, mental health issues are extremely important to society, and I believe that this need has gotten even worse because of the pandemic and the closure of our states and the quarantine and all that's meant for in people's lives. Fortunately, in Placentia, our most vulnerable populations, we have community centers in, and we have nonprofits that we work with, that we fund, that we find grant funding for, to work with those people that find themselves in hard situations, including domestic violence. And we work with them over the long term, in addition to working with Orange County Mental Health at our Homeless Navigation Center, because we recognize that it's not a one-time thing. We need to work with people over the long term to get them stable and working again. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Thank you very much. I think the answers provided by Ms. Shader and Mr. Gray have fully vetted this question out. There is a need for us to build stronger partnerships and relationships with those practitioners and service providers, whether they be in the nonprofit arena or whether they're in the county operations under the mental health programming or just Orange County Healthcare in and of itself. But those relationships and partnerships together, working with nonprofits, exploring outside the box opportunities to build these relationships and bring them alongside of us. And as Rhonda has said, accomplish that through grants and creative and varietal funding opportunities to make it happen. Bring those services into our neighborhoods, make them available, whether it be at our community centers, whether it's at other offshoot facilities. It doesn't do people here any good if they can't get what they need by traveling to Santa Ana or to South County somewhere. So let's get them in here and get it taken care of.
Thank you. Next question goes first to Mr. Shiora. What do you think of the Black Lives Matter movement and its impact, or how it can be handled and addressed in Placentia?
Well, Placentia is a small African-American community, number one. Number two, having worked in the inner city with many minority children, I know very well what discrimination is. But going back to Black Lives Matter, I'll be very blunt. Our children, the whole movement, stand for the flag, kneel for the cross. I said that to my kids. I said that to my students. And that's where I stand on that. And it's that simple. The BML movement, unfortunately, is a political statement. It's not a real civil rights movement. It just isn't. I've been down in the most difficult schools, the most dangerous parts of high schools, middle schools, elementary schools as an educator. So I believe in equality. I believe in working with our children. But I don't believe in lying to our children either. And now is the time to say, BLM, no. There's some good people perhaps in the movement, but it's misguided. It's not a genuine civil rights movement. Thank you.
Ms. Shader?
Thank you. So I recognize as a leader in Placentia that I represent all the people of Placentia. And the Black Lives Matter movement was meaningful in many different ways to the people in Placentia. And I very much supported their right to protest and to make their voices heard. We had a couple of times in the city, we had public comment, and I welcomed them to express their views in this forum and in the front of their city. And I support that completely, their right to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Yes, certainly. There's much that can be said about the BLM movement, but if we peel back the layers of it and we look at what the intent is to properly view how it is that we as a society look at one another and how we place value on one another. And they are within their rights to demonstrate or protest, given whatever their cause or movement may be. And we respect that. What we don't tolerate, and it shouldn't be just a rubber stamp to the organization itself, is the fact that these are people expressing a certain attitude or thought process or reflection on how they view how they've been treated or others have been treated. And it comes down to a humanistic deal. We need to be considerate of all of us and each other's views, be tolerant of other views. But that doesn't give an open access or permission to become destructive, violent, hurtful and harmful to others and destroy and damage property.
Thank you. Mr. Gray?
Black Lives Matter. It's very easy to say, it's very easy to embrace, and I think that there's been a lot of political posturing that has tried to demonize the actual intent of this movement, separate from the organization. Ultimately, we may have a very small Black population here in Placentia. I was frequently the only Black kid in my class growing up here. But ultimately, what the statement Black Lives Matter gets to is that we have to reevaluate the history and the consequences and legacy of our history in the way that it manifests in a variety of ways, including the criminal justice system, the housing system, the education system, and everything in between. And ultimately, when we peel back that layer and recognize that we still have and are yet to resolve systemic inequities within our society at the city, state, national level, what it says is that we have to do a lot more, and we have to be proactive. We can't just allow for the status quo to be maintained. Ultimately, what we have to do is be proactive in the way that we're going to dismantle systems of oppression and ultimately reverse inequities that are longstanding and particularly salient in District 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question goes first to Ms. Shader. What do you think about the Placentia's Veterans Village and Navigation Center?
Both of them?
They're both here.
Okay, so probably two of my most proudest achievements in my 4 years on city council. And the best part has been not the conclusion, because there is no conclusion, but seeing 3 homeless veterans that were living underneath the freeway on Crowther go into the Homeless Navigation Center and then be housed in our Veterans Village. That was a great, great day for me. That is so, so important. Those are both meeting so many vital, vital needs for important people in our society. And so hopefully that tells you how I feel about them. I was a huge proponent from day one, and I remain one. I am the council member that serves on the board of the Navigation Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Certainly. Much like Rhonda, hugely proud of these projects and programmings. They're just touching the tip of the spear on issues. We all recognize that standing up a 100-bed navigation center or a 49-bed Veterans Village is going to just put a pebble in the water, and it's not going to solve our problems, but they're great projects and they're examples to others. Our hope was, through our Veterans Village, the vision of our city administrator was to show people that you can build projects like this and that you can create vast and great partnerships with other organizations to make these things happen. And you have such deep and dramatic impacts on people's lives to actually change, heal, and alter their futures and bring them back to a contributing portion of society. These are not just stopgaps, and they're not just easily thrown together, but they're critical to not only our community, but each and every community that's out there.
Thank you. Mr. Gray.
I couldn't agree more. It's a wonderful accomplishment for our city, and I think it shows a commitment to addressing this issue. Ultimately, of course, as Mayor Smith alluded to, this is the tip of the iceberg, and we have a long way to go. We have a homelessness crisis within the state, certainly within this region as well. And ultimately, until we start developing permanent supportive housing with neighboring jurisdictions, can't go it alone. But once we start making our progress through there, I think we're going to start to see even more exponential benefits to providing real permanent solutions to allowing our homelessness community to be able to be self-sufficient and self-sustainable. Thank you.
Mr. Shiora.
Yes, I'm grateful that such a program mirrors my concern I have for many, many, many years. I believe the homeless crisis, we have to strategize by putting veterans up there on a priority list, along with homeless families. We have to address the homeless issue, but also prioritize. What homeless person do you help first? It's a very difficult question because of limited funding. One of those is homeless families, and yes, homeless veterans. That is just one of the core values as a town we should all be proud of. And I'm so happy that it has mirrors my concerns for homeless veterans, such as the program it did in Placentia. We could even expand upon it. And I'm all in favor of working with my fellow future city council members to build up more. Thank you.
Thank you. This goes first to Mr. Smith. what are your views on the possibility of contracting out city services?
Well, having worked for the city for the number of years I've watched both sides of the coins. And when Rhonda and I came on city council, one of the first things we did is we looked at these contract services that we have. And we would certainly say that we would view that there are opportunities to go down the path and financially and fiscally benefit from contract services. But it requires that we break it down and that we look at what it is that our own resources, our own employees are able to do and what that cost factor looks like. We're deeply opposed, I'm deeply opposed to evergreening contracts. We've got contracts that go on for decades. And if you break those contracts by trying to enter into an agreement to get out of them, they still cost you for years and years to come before you can do it. I think we look first and foremost to our own workforce and our own employees, and we see what it is that they can do, how good a job it is that they do, and we give them that opportunity first.
Thank you. Mr. Gray?
I oppose this quite firmly. Contracting out to private entities oftentimes understates the costs and overstates the benefits, and I think there's an accountability issue as well. I think public employees are far more accountable to the body here than you would find in a private contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shiora?
Certain privatization for city services, I would be open to the idea, and I would make it a citywide vote. Citywide vote. It's important that we're a small town, but not a city. We could get the people engaged to get them voting on important issues. And the truth of the matter, because of the coronavirus, I expect at the state level and the county level, we're going to have more legal leeway to privatize certain services, perhaps, if the voters want it. And I believe it helps the city taxpayers. Why not? Time to look at the budget and see what the heck is going on. I'm new, and I'm bringing you new ideas. But most of all, I'll let you, the voter, decide, not just to select you on city council. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shader?
Contracting services out, whether you're a government entity or a private company, is something that we all do, even in our personal lives. And there's a cost to doing that, and there's a cost to not doing that. And what I found is sometimes when you go into contracting private services, they start out lower and they can balloon into something bigger, and then vice versa. And so what I found is you make the best decision with the information that you have at the time, but you stay on top of it. You don't let it go. You see how it's going, you monitor it, and then you may have to adjust and make different decisions later on. And I really think that that's the best approach. I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all. Thank you.
Thank you. This is going to be our last question before we go to closing statements. And it will go first to Mr. Gray. Mr. Gray, how would you increase community engagement, ensure that the community has an opportunity to be heard, and participate in community events?
I think it's a wonderful question. I view the role of a city councilman as one, not just being sort of a steward for the well-being of the city, but also having your ear to the ground and being proactive and bringing people to the table. And this is my pledge to all of you. If elected, I will hold regular town halls, not just from a distance, but being sure to bring people into the conversation, not only so I can keep people abreast of the goings-on of the city, but to also hear what your concerns are. Ultimately, city engagement starts at the top, and it requires bringing people into a conversation proactively. It's not enough to keep people at an arm's distance. In terms of community events, as someone who's helped organize some of our biggest community events, including the Concerts in the Park series, I think they're vitally important for developing a community spirit, but also towards building the cohesion in our community that's made us so unique relative to other towns. So I'll close with this. As a council member, I think it's vitally important not just to be reflective of the values of your community, but to also be proactive in understanding the unique needs of your community. And as we've transitioned into a district system, I think we have to recognize that the needs of our community are going to be different depending on the districts that we represent. And I think it's incumbent upon our representatives to be able to reflect that when it comes to having a seat at the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shiora?
Thank you. One of the best ways to engage our community is many ways. One way is through technology. I'm new, I'm different, I'm independent, I'm self-funded, I'm pro-life, I'm also pro-immigrant. And because of that, one way to do is work with our communities. We live in the state of California, and I'm proud of that. I'm son of a Japanese father. My mother's French, my father's Japanese. I'm a son of an immigrant, and I'm proud of it. That's why one of the unique ways that makes me different than many other candidates in the state is I'm establishing a new political party called Maria, M-A-R-I-A. And what it stands for is Movimiento a Reformar Inmigración Ahora, Movement to Reform Immigration Now. I'm pro-life, I'm pro-immigrant, I'm pro-family, and we're going to make it happen. And that is the way we're going to do it. And keeping people engaged is the way to make it happen. I encourage you to visit my website, placencialibrary.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shader.
Thank you. I am running in District 1, which is a very unique district, and I've been really engaged in that district and visited it many times. And a few of the takeaways that I have is, one, they love personal presence, and so I definitely plan on doing town halls in the district and showing up in person. Also, I've talked about putting an electronic billboard at the local store that's in La Jolla to have ongoing announcements so that they can get plugged in. And then just continuously talking to people, because the city has a lot of communications and we make a lot of effort to include people, but people are so busy. And so you have to stay in touch with them and you have to encourage them and let them know how to plug in, how to sign up for our weekly newsletter, and let them know that those things are available. So I think it's a constant effort of being available and being in your district. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Thank you very much. This is probably the strength of many in this city, is that sense of community, that connectivity, that understanding that when we work as a community in partnership and collaboration, we work in a way that creates compassion and understanding of one another. Technology affords us so much day in and day out as to how it is we perform and work and do reach outs. But really at the end of it is be outside the box, get out from behind the computer, get outside of the walls of your office and get into the neighborhoods, walk the streets, talk to people. As Devin stated, create these opportunities for neighborhood gatherings to come together, be an open source of information to your constituents and to the community at large. Don't restrict yourself just to your one district. You know, you represent and serve this entire Placentia community. They have wants and needs, they want to be heard on things, and it's incumbent upon us to be there for that.
Thank you. This brings us to our closing statements, and they will be in the reverse order of our opening statements. So first to give her closing statement will be Ms. Shader.
Thank you. My goal is always to be a well-balanced leader and policymaker, making a way for the many priorities of the people of Placentia. However, my true north for all that I do is the fiscal sustainability of Placentia. They say money isn't everything, but it sure helps. In the next 4 years, with the income created, I am looking forward to improving roads and sidewalks, our parks, and improving communication with the residents of District 1. I also intend to continue to make your safety a high priority, investing and working with our police and fire departments to meet the demands of our vital city. As the Orange County Register has noted, our new Placentia Fire Department is meeting residents' needs. I am honored to be endorsed by both Placentia Fire and Police. I am asking for your vote so I can continue to advocate for District 1 in Placentia. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight's event.
Thank you. Mr. Sciorra.
Thank you. As the newest member of this great town, Placentia, I'm also bringing new ideas. No political baggage, no outside campaign committees based in other locations outside of the city limits, like some candidates. I'm independent, I'm pro-life, I'm pro-immigrant, I speak Spanish. Now is the time I will have city council members also meet with me to have meetings in English and in Spanish to really make it bilingual. Also, to be inclusive, I have a dedicated website called placentia.city for the city. I have another system called placentia.email, where all residents will get a dedicated email to have timely information. Also, I'll be the first city council member that I know of in the state to allow internet voting to occur. I believe it can be done on city local levels, on local issues. Now is the time to have internet voting on the local issues. It can be done. Now is the time to look forward. I'm counting for your vote to become the next city council member for District 5 and Placentia Library trustee as a candidate. Let's move forward. I'll always believe that you want something done differently, you have to have new candidates. So I'm asking for your vote. And November the 3rd.
Thank
vote
you, Mr.
Blair. Thank you
Shearer.
very much.
Mr. Gray.
Thank you all for this opportunity to address you. This is the first time that our district is going to have a chance to elect someone from the heart of our community to address the very specific and acute needs that exist for District 1. It's imperative that our representative reflects the values both in governing philosophy, but also in community. That's why I'm the only candidate here who's been endorsed by the Orange County Democratic Party. We have disparities in our district. They have not been addressed to an adequate degree, and that's an issue of resources, a question of the way we've allocated our resources, rather. I'd like to ask for your vote tonight. If you'd like to learn more about me, feel free to visit devingray.org. Look forward to speaking with all of you in the month ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Thank you very much. To all that have participated or listened tonight, I want to offer a hearty thank you. We have discussed or touched on several important issues this evening, and each of us brings to the table a desire to make the Placentia community a stronger, more fiscally stable, engaging environment for the betterment of all of our residents. I feel that while I have accomplished much, I have much more to offer to our residents, my fellow city staff and workers, and to my fellow council colleagues. We are rich in heritage with a continuing bright future. I kindly ask for your vote to continue my service to the City of Placentia and District 5. Thank you very much.
Thank you. On behalf of the City of Placentia and the League of Women Voters of North Orange County, I want to thank all of you for joining us this evening. Thanks also to our timekeepers and to city staff for recording tonight's forum. Links to the recording of this event will be available on the city's website. On our League's website at lwvnoc.org, you will find links to votersedge.org, where candidates for all offices that pertain to your ballot can submit information at no cost, as well as links to the ED Voter Guide and Pros and Cons, the League's popular unbiased analysis of all sides of all propositions. Most of all, we must thank our candidates for running and for participating in this forum. Without their willingness to serve, our democracy simply would not work. Good evening, and please remember to vote, have a plan, execute your plan. The only way your vote will not count is if you choose not to make it. Thank you and good evening.